Oh no, I'm running out of ideas to make videos about. Oh no. Yeah, right. Nick Shell never runs out of ideas for videos about hair loss, ever. Don't you forget it. Hi, I'm Nick Shell. This is a response to some comments I received on a video I made called 5 More Ways to Predict If You Will Go Bald, a sequel. Hampton Hudson had this to say. I think he makes some good points. Quote, I think you just envy small foreheads and straight hairlines because you don't have that. I don't either. That's why I figure you're making these statements. End quote. I think that's a very intelligent comment, and I liked it, and I've never really considered that. So let's consider it, okay? It is true that since being, I don't know, 16 or 17, I haven't had a small forehead, and I haven't had a straight across hairline. Looking back on my graduation pictures, because I turned 18 a month before I graduated high school, okay? And looking back on those pictures, having just turned 18, I can see where my temples had already started receding. I just didn't notice it. And so for all of my adult life, I have had some kind of hairline which was not straight, and it became more angled as we went along. But as an adult, I've never really had a straight across hairline. And we could also say I've always had a tall forehead, and even on my other channel, Family Friendly Daddy Blog, which focuses on ethnic backgrounds and DNAs and tests and stuff like that, people on their own, without me ever mentioning it, noticed and said that I had a tall forehead. And it's never been something I've been insecure about. But I think a good point is, knowing that it was part of my identity that I had a tall forehead, as people have perceived that on their own, I've always been comfortable with it. But I think there's some truth in the fact that, okay, if my identity is, oh yeah, I'm a guy with a tall forehead and I'm cool with it, naturally if I notice a guy with a small forehead, it's not so much maybe even that I envy it, it's that I notice it and that I glamorize it to the point of the epitome of a man's perfect hairline is David Schwimmer or Anthony Bourdain or Tony Danza, because not only do they have zero hair loss and they're older, but they've got this small boxed in forehead. And that I glamorize that as if that's the perfect hairline, which I guess that would almost raise a new question. Show me a man with a perfect hairline anyway. My answer is probably somebody like Leonardo DiCaprio, which is at least a Norwood too, but he's got a thick full head of hair and he's always got this mane of long hair that he has. And Leonardo DiCaprio, in my opinion, is the epitome of a guy who just has perfect hair. To my knowledge, he hasn't had a hair transplant like Bradley Cooper or Matthew McConaughey, to my knowledge, and I'm usually wrong when I say that. But to my knowledge, Leonardo DiCaprio has a perfect head of hair, though he does not have a straight across hairline, and of course he's what, close to 40 now, but he doesn't have a perfect hairline. So I think there's definitely some glamorization that goes into this idea of a perfect hairline, when in really that's not even a perfect hairline. A perfect hairline, especially for a man my age, pushing 40, should be closer to a Norwood too. And in theory, if you're looking for this perfect head of hair, this perfect hairline, once you get closer to 30, you should be getting closer to a Norwood 2. And in theory, you get to keep that Norwood 2 for the rest of your life and never have any diffuse thinning in a perfect world. But I'm Nick Shell, and that's not my perfect world. It's almost like the concept of living the American dream, you know. Well, that American dream is not really so much of a dream for most people. It's kind of like the same thing for me. Like a perfect head of hair. You know what a perfect head of hair looks like if you're Nick Shell? Ba-bow. This. I mean, have you looked at the comments since I started shaving off my hair with the zero guard? Have you looked at the comments? Nothing but positive reinforcements. And the few people who have said, I liked you better with hair, Nick, they're the outsiders. They're ignored. People aren't agreeing with those people. People 100% are reinforcing this. The best hair that Nick Shell can have is to not have hair. That's the best hair that Nick Shell can have, even though he could still have hair if he wanted it. This is the best hair. And that's the irony. It's not just so true for myself, but it's true for so many of you once you decide to make that move. So, yeah. So good point. I think it is true about me that I have had this habit of glamorizing low foreheads beyond the point of just zero hair loss. And when in reality, probably a Norwood 2 is the most natural, normal looking thing for a man anyway. I keep saying that baldness and having a beard is part of the masculine identity. So even then, even if you keep all your hair, still, you should still be a Norwood 2 if you're going to have a natural, normal looking hairline. Unlike, and I love him, but Joel McHale, who's had a hair transplant. Because he was what, like Norwood 4, and then they saved it, and now it's more of kind of a Norwood 2.5-ish thing. Because like I watch his show, the Joe McHale show on Netflix, I watch it faithfully every Monday. And even if you go back and look at Community, like you can look at his hairline and think, hey, he's a good looking guy, he's a fun guy, he's a funny guy. But now that I know too much about hair loss and too much about hair transplants, I look at his hairline and I think, most people wouldn't notice this, but that's not a natural hairline the way it does what it does. It's too perfect and it's Norwood 2.5-inch. It's too perfect. It's not natural. So for me, it's always going to be about more of a natural hairline. So while I may have had a history of glamorizing these low foreheads of this ideal standard, in reality, I think the best hairline is the most natural hairline that you can't tell. So for example, and you know what? I had been fooled by Tom Hanks and by Bradley Cooper and by Matthew McConaughey. It wasn't until viewers told me that they had hair transplant and I Googled it and I saw the before pictures that I realized, oh, okay. So, I mean, there is a such thing as people being able to fool me with a good hair transplant. But now that I overanalyze it, it still goes back to this whole concept of, okay, well, whether I can tell or not though, whatever looks the most natural and normal I think is what's going to be the most attractive. And so even for me, like, this looks good. This looks good. Sure, it may be a shock for other people in real life when they see it. Like, Nick, what'd you do to all your hair? You weren't going bald. What'd you do that for? And then they get used to it. And then they realize, wow, bald Nick Shell is the real Nick Shell all along. The guy with hair, that I thought that's who Nick was, but really, this is who Nick Shell is now, you know? And I think too it has to do a lot with maturity as a man is what's happened. Max De Silva, he published a video recently kind of talking about how there's this necessary phase as a man that you learn to become a jerk. And that's part of being a man. You have to be able to tell people no. You have to be able to be willing to hurt people's feelings. You have to make decisions that people aren't going to like. And then at the same time, not worry about what people think. Like, there's a necessary, how do I say it? It's almost like a passing of the torch to you as a boy to a man. In the same way that you lose your hair and start growing a beard. The older you get as a man, the more you realize that you have to disappoint people. Because one of the traits of being a masculine guy is that you're a leader. I don't think there's any way around that. If you want to be a masculine man who's respected by people, you don't need hair to do that. You have to have leadership qualities, and those can be learned. Unlike winning the hair lottery or not, you can actually gain leadership skills. You can actually gain confidence in yourself. And being a good leader means that you make unpopular decisions. And that you care less about what people think about you. And to a certain degree, you should care about what people think about you. You shouldn't go around in public wearing pajamas and wearing a fanny pack. Unless you're just trying to make a statement, which don't make that statement, right? Right? But to some degree, you should care about what the social norms are. Of course, now the social norm is becoming men embracing their baldness, right? But it is important, and I think it all goes hand in hand, that as a man, when you accept the fact that to be respected and to be confident, you must become a good leader. You must shed away what doesn't make you feel comfortable. You must get away from your comfort level, because being a good leader often it's not about being comfortable. It's about doing what's right, and it's going to help other people. And that in turn makes people respect you more. And I think it's absolutely that shaving your head is a reflection of that concept. I'm a masculine man. I'm a leader. And what's one of the easiest ways to prove it? Get rid of my hair. Because that shows I don't care that I need people's approval to make these sometimes difficult decisions. You know, and even for me as a dad, I'm the disciplinarian in our family. I have to enforce rules all day long. I'm used to people at times not liking my decisions. And it takes me back to 1992, school year. I was in first grade in gym class. And we had this coach, I think it's, and in sixth grade, basically all it was like pretty much every day we played basketball. So like, you know, I'm playing basketball every day. I played basketball in fifth and sixth grade on a team. We're playing basketball every day. But sometimes we would file in, sit against the cylinder brick wall on our brick. It was numbered. I think I was number 42, sit next to it. And after he does roll call, then we go play basketball. But the thing is, sometimes everybody was just rowdy, and he couldn't get quite enough for him to take roll. And so what would happen would be, all right, guys, if you're not going to listen to me and let me take roll call, you can just sit on the wall the whole class. And sometimes that happened. We just had to sit there. Imagine the irony. We spent an hour just sitting down on the ground because the guys were too rowdy, when they needed to get rid of that energy by playing basketball to begin with, but he couldn't do roll call. And in my mind, I was thinking, man, this guy's a jerk. Doesn't he want people to like him? Doesn't he want friends? And me being a naive 12-year-old boy, thinking about this man who was 42 years old, as if he cared that he had friends. So being masculine often is about making unpopular decisions that ultimately are best for everybody in the end. And I think by getting rid of your hair, that's one of the easiest ways to acknowledge that part of your identity. I am Nick Shell. I am a leader. I make unpopular decisions. And whether people are like it or not is not the goal. It's about doing what's right as a leader. And I am a leader. I'm a role model for balding guys. And even if in the real world, some people might not like my hair, it's not my problem. I can know in my heart that this is who I am and that I'm helping men in the process of coping with their hair loss. That may be an unpopular decision, but for you watching this, it's a popular decision, isn't it?